going to kick things off for you with the Irish Daily Star this morning. I'm going to draw your attention to this little line over here from Jacob Patterson, who says that Martin is in the frame to get the North job. This was a bit of a surprise, I have to say, when I picked up the papers this morning to see that it looks now at Michael O'Neill is almost certainly going to take that Stoke job. I think he's going to see out the last couple of qualifiers with the North before doubling his wage to take on that Stoke City gig. And Martin O'Neill, writes Jacob Patterson, is in the frame to replace him at Northern Ireland. And this, I think, will be a bit of a surprise to Irish football fans. I think because I saw somebody making the point yesterday that it's surprising to have seen a club like Stoke, who were in the market for Martin O'Neill previously, and you would say they're very different managers. It appears from the outside looking in, they're very different managers about how they go about their business. And so if that's slightly askew, then you would think it's slightly askew that the job that he's leaving, that same people would be interested in Martin O'Neill getting the gig.
I think, again, we're underestimating Martin O'Neill's reputation outside of the Republic of Ireland. The reason Stoke went after him a year ago is because his reputation in England is still very high. And in fact, I would argue his reputation in England is higher than that of Michael O'Neill, despite all that Michael O'Neill has done with Northern Ireland. Michael O'Neill needs to prove himself at championship level. I think he will. I think Stoke's a perfect fit for Michael O'Neill in many ways. But where did Northern Ireland go? Like, what are their options? Martin O'Neill, former player.
Ian Barraclough, Tommy Wright, Stephen Robinson, all the
exactly
big names that you'd...
So if they can get Martin O'Neill at the right price, I think they're going to go after that. It's obviously going to be a huge shock to the system, and there is the possibility that we may end up playing Northern Ireland in the Nations League playoff next March.
And they beat us 4 or 5-0 under the tutelage of
free-flowing Martin O'Neill naming his team 4 days in advance.
Yeah. Where did it all go wrong and where do we go from here? That's really what you're asking. Elsewhere on the back page this morning is Roman Gods, Lennon's Wonder Boys stun Lazio. This is Celtic's late winner at Lazio last night, 2-1. And it's not win or bust, says Jurgen Klopp, ahead of the big game against Manchester City this weekend, and a photograph of the famous bus scenes from one of last year's fixtures between the two. Not win or bust.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say it's not win or bust. It's, what, a quarter of the way through the season?
It's classic. It's a massive game, so we try to downplay it, as opposed to it's a shit game, and so we need to overstate it. It's pretty classic manager speak.
The Liverpool City game's on the back of a lot of the pages, and it's all actually around the bus, because City demanding guarantees of safety ahead of Anfield trip. It was actually the Champions League game the season before last where all the issues were, and there was the famous footage from inside when the Liverpool supporters, as they did a lot during that season and have done since, surround the bus, create the atmosphere, set off the flares, but it got completely out of hand. Bus was attacked. Very fortunate that there weren't more serious injuries. So Manchester City, this is the back page of the Irish Independent, they've sought assurances from Liverpool about security arrangement for Sunday's top-of-the-table clash, talking about the bottles and flares that were thrown, and Pep Guardiola complaining about the lack of protection. And City were bemused afterwards that there were no arrests made. Last season's game, and interestingly, they played this time last season and it was the dullest game of the year, 0-0 draw, and there was nothing on the pitch or off the pitch. But there have been posters circulating on social media, Adrian, urging fans to line the streets around Anfield to bring pyro, pints, flags and banners to make the atmosphere like a European night. City expected to keep the route to Anfield a secret in an attempt to ensure they arrive unscathed, but eventually you have to get to Anfield and right around the stadium, and there's 4 ways in.
There's only so many laundry baskets that you can...
And there's only one entrance where the bus can go, so I think the Liverpool supporters are going to be there. As long as nobody does something stupid, all of this is perfectly fine. Being on the streets, having your flares, all of that, but as you say, all it takes is one lunatic, and not even a lunatic, one just idiot with a few pints on him, with a pint glass in his hand who throws it at the bus, and all hell breaks loose. So you would hope that actually Liverpool supporters, I'm sure, want to make this a thing that they can do for every game and have that sort of atmosphere. But if it goes wrong once, that's probably going to be the end of it. Maybe City just bringing this up again to distract from some of their own problems. The other story, by the way, on the back of the Independent, house hunting McIlroy may play in more European Tour tournaments. Now, it's very unlike Rory McIlroy to change his mind on something, clearly. But Rory McIlroy, it seems, is making preparations to spend more time in England after previously basing himself in the United States, according to Global Golf Post. that most reputable of sources.
It's up there with Golf Weekly.
McIlroy is planning to buy a property in London or Wentworth to use as a base between May and October. The news surprising considering the conviction which McIlroy has spoken about preferring life on the other side of the Atlantic.
It's gas. That's all I can say about it. The Examiner this morning, it's Nitcham's injury time winner that sent Celtic into the knockout rounds of the Europa League and that celebration last night. And also Duncan Casey's column today, Inside, focuses on the Munster influence at South Africa for the World Cup, particularly the S&C coach Alan Walters. And one good story here that I'll try and recount for you as briefly as I possibly can, where the both of them worked at Munster. And Duncan Casey was saying, which was a bit of a surprise to me, how the S&C coach at times can be the one who delivers the news from the head coaching team that would be sort of stepping in terms of, even in relation to form and stuff like that, they're taking players aside and saying, where are you at from an injury point of view, and having those types of conversations with them, which I hadn't fully appreciated. But he says that Alan Walters is somebody who you'd literally kick a door down for.
Right.
They had a couple of these recovery boots, you know, the recovery boots that players have, but they only had 2 pairs of them at Munster. Sometimes players would take them home and then they would never come back again. So Alan Walters was pretty protective of his recovery boots. Duncan Casey said at one point, I have an early appointment, can I take them? I'll bring them in the next morning. Did that, left his house, forgot them, thought, I can't go back in without the boots because I don't want to let this guy down. But I ran back into he was staying in student accommodation, his key fob wouldn't work. He's like, oh, right, I'm kicking the door down because the office won't be able to 9 o'clock to get the card to work. Kicks the door down, as he says, wood sort of splats everywhere. The doors in smithereens. He goes flying in. He's normally got like a wooden bookshelf just inside the door. And he's like, he rushes in.
I see where this is going.
He's like, where's the bookcase? And he sees all these women's underwear everywhere. And he's like, oh, shit, this is not my house. He's kicked down the wrong door.
Why was there women's underwear everywhere?
Because it was the wrong. There was obviously a laundry horse. What's it called? Clothes horse.
Right.
Horse, a laundry
I thought
horse.
you were going to say a lingerie party.
A laundry horse. It's a new. I think I've just invented something new. Anyway,
A laundry or a lingerie? Which one is it, Adrian?
to be fair. He says women's laundry is all he says, and a clothes horse in front of me. At which point it dawned on me I was in the wrong apartment. I don't know what that says about anything, but there we go. Good story.
The Irish Times, story from Gavin Cummiskey, which I think there's been a lot of rumours about this down in Connacht over the last little while. Doubts over Aki and Marmion's Connacht future. We can chat about this with Alan Quinlan when he's in, but Connacht facing an injury crisis and the long-term possibility of life without 2 of their Ireland internationals, Kieran Marmion and Bundy Aki. They're without the likes of Gavin Turnbury and Quinn Rue for their Champions Cup openers. Saracens, it seems, looking to add Kieran Marmion to their squad ahead of next season. Obviously, Saracens have some other issues at the moment, but it seems a number of English Premiership clubs would sign 27-year-old Kieran Marmion. Andy Friend was talking at the Champions Cup launch on Wednesday, said they're very keen for Marmion to stay. It does seem, reading through this, that Marmion has not taken the omission from the World Cup squad very well, which is totally understandable, and that he's extremely frustrated with not making it and is very much considering his future in Ireland. And likewise with Bundy Aki, who obviously wasn't happy when he signed his new contract and then Pat Lam jumped ship very soon afterwards. There was a lot of talk at the time in 2016 he might sign for Munster. It seems with Munster on the verge of signing Damien Deland that they're going to be well stocked in the centre, so too are Leinster. And if Aki is going to leave, that it's probably going to be abroad, which would bring, like Marmion, an end to his international career. And obviously losing the 2 of them would be a monster blow for Connacht, particularly. Even these sort of stories, when they've made such a good, strong start to the season, to have this sort of stuff swirling around.
Hard to know because they do crop up every now and then, and it's hard to know whether to get sucked in by them, that actually there might be something real about them.
Well, all these stories
it's just
are
a bit of gamesmanship.
And at 1 o'clock today, we get an email in to say that Bundy Aki signed a new 3-year contract.
Added a nice bit of turf onto their pay packet, whatever else. We're going to talk to that, regardless of whether it's just smoke and mirrors. We're going to talk to Alan Quinlan about it later on.
As if it's very much true.
Saracens have damaged lives of rivals, says Danny Kerr. This is the London Times today. He talks about the various punishments that the English club have been hit with on the back of their breaching the pay cap. He says it affects people's lives, it affects people's families, and that's why so many players have been so annoyed over the years that it's been swept under the carpet, that it's been brushed aside. So it's the human impact of the breach of those pay caps at Saracens. Southgate rap for Maddison. This is James Maddison been told that he must become a high-performance, low-maintenance player if he's going to thrive under Gareth Southgate. And FA to consider spying charges. Liverpool, it turns out, writes Martin Ziegler and Matt Dickinson, have been, their sporting director Michael Edwards and a couple of other staff members are possibly facing individual misconduct charges from the FA over allegations that they hacked into Manchester City's scouting network.
Yeah, this has been doing the rounds for the last couple of months as to whether or not actually there's going to be an investigation. It seems that a staff member left one club, went to the other, and brought some good stuff with them. And that Liverpool, you'd wonder what the level of punishment can be for something like that.
Well,
and what is spying in football?
I don't know.
Unless you've illegally hacked into something.
Frequently
what's
in employment contracts is written in some sort of our information is not your information, and when you leave that shit behind you. But in reality,
you have some sort of Men in Black style thing where you forget everything you previously learned.
I mean, in reality, I think that's just accepted.
The Guardian, front page of The Guardian actually, policemen charged over death of footballer. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this over the coming days. Police constable yesterday charged with the murder of former footballer Dalian Atkinson following the fatal encounter in which a stun gun and other force was used. Atkinson, of course, who played for Aston Villa at Manchester City, he died in 2016 at the age of just 48 after a row outside his father's home in Telford. Two officers are going to be prosecuted over his murder. And in the sports section, again, fears of repeat bus attacks. City asked Liverpool to ensure safety after fans call for flares. I would have assumed that, and maybe I'm wrong in how policing works around these games, that actually you're talking to Merseyside police to ensure their safety rather than Liverpool as a club.
Yeah.
All Liverpool as a club can do is say, please don't attack the bus.
Well, I presume there's three-way conversations there. I presume that all parties are having sort of parallel conversations. Mac absent, writes the Irish Daily Mail this morning. This is McCarthy turns down Mick's Ireland call-up, writes Philip Quinn here. It's been McCarthy rocked by James, Mick McCarthy rocked by James McCarthy's decision to reject a return to the Republic of Ireland fold this month. The reasons are a little bit unclear, it has to be said. The personal reasons, I think, is what's been given.
Yeah. Mentioned to Dan McDonald on the football show last night, like, personal reasons is a very loaded statement. So Stephen Doyle spoke to James McCarthy
in one of the great interviews of all time.
Great questioning.
It was the inventiveness to reword that question five times over. And
the brilliance of James McCarthy to still somehow go back and give the same answer again and again.
You might say brilliance.
That's James McCarthy, and I'm not surprised that that's the sort of interview you get. But I think now, looking at that, it's no surprise that James McCarthy's not in the squad. You definitely got the sense that the best thing for him, and it probably is the best thing for him after such a long layoff, and he's played little or no football in over 3 years, that is to stay at Crystal Palace, get his fitness up and up and up, and actually put himself in a position that after the international break, Roy Hodgson is saying, you know what, you're back in the team, and he gets a run of games. Personal issues suggests there's something else going on, that he doesn't want to be part of this squad. Whereas actually, if it's just fitness, just say, he's hanging back.
Yeah.
Maybe there is something else going on.
There's probably more to it if that's what's happening. Just taking each game as it comes, week after week, as he says.
Finally, the Mirror busted again. City call for action to prevent new cop coach attack after pyros and pints. Social media post. Also, Andre Gomez could make a rapid return from his ankle break. They say he could actually play again this season, and Gunners want Xhaka out in January. John Cross with the exclusive that Arsenal are going to try and get rid of Granit Xhaka.
What
an overreaction.
Shambles. Now, the Irish news before we leave the newspapers feed this morning. ONeill poised for Stoke move. This is the story that rumbles on. It looks like it's going to happen at some point in the next few days, and Schlock-Neil boss happy with the underdog tag. That is the newspapers for you this morning. It's almost 8 o'clock on this Friday morning. It's cold and it's frosty, and we'd love to hear from you this morning to get your thoughts on whether it's the Premier League or the rugby, whatever it is that's floating your boat. My OGEAs we've been discussing a bit earlier, and we will be discussing again a little bit later on. Whatever it is that floats your boat this morning ahead of the weekend, please do get in contact with us. You're watching or listening to OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. As I said, it is 8 o'clock on this Friday morning.